Aloha, and welcome to SUP FM, the podcast for stand-up paddleboarders everywhere. So with no further ado, let's get out on the water and on with the show. Here are your hosts, Nick and Simon.
Aloha, Nick.
Hello, Mr. Simon. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, or should I say, good day, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about an Australian today.
Exactly. So you've got James Casey on. How did he get into paddleboarding?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, he's the 5 times Australian world champ. Did I just say the 5-time Australian champ?
You did.
And he started.
You just said it twice, actually.
Well, I did that so I could edit it out.
Oh, keep it in. It sounds better.
Oh, will do. But yeah, James Casey had an interesting intro to SUP surfing, and his dad used to make boards and stand-up paddle boards and things, and I don't know how, but they got hold of a board, and they didn't have a paddle, so they trimmed down a rake, because in Australia they have plastic rakes with like fingers on them, and they just sliced off the fingers, and it turned into a triangular paddle. So it was quite an interesting way to start stand-up paddling.
I don't think we've heard that story before.
No, I think the next best one was actually when Andy Bartlett started learning underneath an aircraft carrier in New York City. But this one's pretty good too. But James Casey, as I said, is a 5 times Australian champ. But his biggest claim to fame is that he's the M2O champion. Now, for those of you who don't know what M2O is, the Molokai to Oahu race is run every year and has been for the last 23 years on a 32-mile course between 2 Hawaiian islands, crossing the Kaiwi Channel, which comes in at a depth of 2,300 feet. And after trying really hard to get in, you'll hear all his stories about how he couldn't even get in to get a start on this thing. After a couple of years, he eventually won it. So it's a really interesting story, and he's got some great stories about his partnership with Sunova, and he's designing boards, and yeah, he's generally an amazing guy to chat to. So let's get a slice of action from James Casey. Good morning, James Casey. How's it going? Welcome to the SUP FM podcast. How's life in Sydney, Australia?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Nick. And excited to have a chat with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I mean, you're on the other side of the world to us, so it's 11 hours distance. I think it's early morning your time and late night my time.
Yeah, when we were discussing it, couldn't be a worse time zone difference, I think. But yeah, we made it work. So yeah, thanks for staying up late, and I didn't have to get up too early.
No worries. Now, sometimes I do occasionally interviews in Hawaii as well. It's a similar deal, but other side of the world. So let's go back to your roots. What drew you to the ocean in the very first place?
Yeah, so my mum and dad, they were both surfers from way back. Dad used to shape surfboards, and mum, she used to compete. She actually won an amateur world title way back in the day, and she always reminds us that. But she said, you know, growing up on the beach as well, on Sydney's northern beaches, it's kind of it's what you do. You know, you grow up, you go to the beach, you learn to surf, and yeah, from as young as I can remember, we were not always surfing, but I was always in the ocean and doing lots of different sports, and the ocean was always there. It was always part of our lives.
Awesome. And it's always a challenge when you're a kid trying to get a surfboard, but I guess if your dad was shaping boards, that was no problem at all.
Yeah, so actually he didn't shape boards when we were growing up. He started his own business and sold it by the time he was about 20. So well before we were around, but there are still a few of his old boards. KC twin fins were what he was famous for. And yeah, he created quite a good reputation back in the day, and yeah.
Excellent. So you started surfing. That was your first introduction to the ocean?
I grew up. I was lucky enough. I grew up on the beach, like literally our house backed onto the dunes, and the first house I remember. And I remember getting a boogie board when I was probably 4 or 5, and Dad used to pull us along the beach, like along the wet sand on the boogie boards, and he'd take us out, get us a few waves, and it wasn't probably until I was probably 10 or 11 that I really got into surfing. I remember we went for a surf, one of the local spots, and I was just borrowing a board, and of one of Dad's old ones, and he goes, "You can have this one. This is yours now." And I remember that was the first time that okay, I'm a surfer now. That's pretty cool, So it wasn't. I was always around the ocean, but I didn't really get this. That's I guess the surfing bug until I was, in year 4 or year 5, or probably year 3 or year 4 at school. So yeah, wasn't a super early starter.
So then it was like a bunch of mates hanging around the beach, and you just surfed and surfed. Did you ever do any surf trips?
As a youngster, like I guess as a family, we used to always go up to Crescent Head, which is a classic point break wave about halfway towards Queensland from here. So it's about 5 or 6 hours up the coast, and it's whenever we did go up there, I was in the water
Awesome.
like
and,
all
I guess
day.
you must live for this, because I remember as a kid in South Africa, I was in Cape Town, and we'd occasionally head up to Jeffreys Bay and go for a session up there for 2 weeks. And it's just incredible. Those days were just amazing. Surf trips are just the best ever.
Yeah. Crescent Head's not quite as good as Jeffreys Bay, but it's a nice wave.
Yeah, I think you can't not surf well at Jeffreys Bay. It's just such an incredible break. Have you been down to South Africa?
No, it's on my bucket list though. I got a few friends over there, Tom and Taryn King, and they've always been hassling me, when you come into South Africa, let us know. But yeah, it's on my list.
Excellent. So let's dig into your formal education. I see you've got a Bachelor of Environment.
Yeah, so finished high school, and my parents have always been big on education. So they said, we don't care what you do, we just want you to go to university and get a degree. So I was like, okay, well, I still have no idea what I want to do, in terms of work and job and life and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, well, just do something that I enjoy. And I guess when I was going to university, I guess climate change, and it still is, it was a sort of a big thing and something that I'm passionate about. So I guess the course that lined up with that was a Bachelor of Environment, and so it was environmental management and climate science. So that was super interesting, and kind of worked into me becoming a meteorologist. But I don't do any of that now. I'm sort of more into the stand-up paddle and coaching side of things. But super interesting, and would love to do more study on it actually, but time is not always your friend.
I mean, it's always fascinated me as well, to be honest. Geography was my favorite subject at school. But so you actually worked as a meteorologist as well, right?
Yeah. So I after I finished uni, there were like a few ads in in the university sort of, I guess, forums, and they, as one of the reasons I like geography so much is because of the weather. Like as a surfer, Dad taught us to read the weather, before, surf forecasts, like good surf forecasts are out and all that I knew of them. And he would say, when there's this low pressure system, it's going to bring a swell to here. And when there's a high pressure system, it means there probably aren't going to be waves. So he taught me that early on. And it sort of stuck with me, and throughout all, university, and that was always, a passion of mine. I also loved kite surfing. So, looking for the wind was meant looking at the weather maps. And when a job came up for working as a meteorologist at Weather Zone, I was like, that'd be pretty cool. And yeah, it was super, super fun, super interesting. So I did that for a few years, just casually, because I was still at university and working a few other jobs. But yeah, meteorologist, that was a fun one.
Yeah, and what was Weather Zone?
Yeah, Weather Zone's I guess a forecasting company. So they do a lot of forecasts for the Channel 9. So I guess our big TV stations, so 9, 10 and 7, and also like our ABC, so national broadcaster, and then also private clients as well, such as mining companies or energy companies, all the above. So yeah, it's still a good company, and I chat to my boss every now and then. So he goes, "When are you coming back?"
Yeah. So obviously you don't need to go back because you've got a career in stand-up paddle now. Were you competing in surfing before university, and when did stand-up paddle come into play?
Yeah, so it's a good question, because I didn't, I guess for me, growing up, when I was first growing up, stand-up paddleboarding didn't exist. So I grew up surfing and actually playing rugby union. I played rugby from when I was probably 10 to 22, and I played like in a first grade competition here in Sydney for the Warringah Rats which is like a local team. I guess it's a step down from the professional. It's a I call it semi-professional, but I would have maybe earned maybe $500 in match payments the whole time. So it's like I wasn't a regular first grader, but I played a couple games, and sort of it was growing up was like the representative level, and then so I basically, when I first started uni and when I was at university, I was pretty heavily into the rugby union scene, and playing each weekend and training Tuesday, Thursday, and then gym every other day. And I was a flanker, so number 7.
Ah, excellent. The hardest working man in the field.
That's it. The tackle machine. I wasn't the fastest, but I had a good engine, so I just sort of keep going, tick along. And a lot of mates still play rugby, and actually some of them are sort of retiring now. Their body's fallen apart, which I'm very thankful that I never got too many bad injuries.
Because that was my next question. I mean, rugby's a hard sport, isn't it? So it's difficult to come out without any injuries.
Yeah, I broke my foot when I was like in a under 14s, like sort of club competition, and I broke it like the second game, and I went to the tent where they assess what damage you've done, and they had no idea. They thought I dislocated a bone in my foot, so they're trying to push it back in, and I tell you what, I've never felt pain like that. They were pushing on this broken bone, and like, I don't know, so they just taped it up, and I played the rest of the weekend, and it wasn't until like the Thursday, so 4 or 5 days later, that they went to the doctor. It was still sore, and they're like, yeah, you've broken your foot. So it was
It was like a painful week.
Yeah, so that was not too fun. Then I was in a moon boot for about 3 months. But that was probably my worst injury from rugby union, which is pretty lucky compared to a lot of my other mates. But I didn't really get into paddleboarding until probably just towards the end of university. I was just stand up surfing, so I never got into the racing side of things until I think it was 2014 or 2015. So it was the 2014. That was my first year. I'm really sort of following the racing scene, and it was kind of I never really intended to get into it, to be honest. I always loved surfing, and I got a stand-up paddleboard because here in Sydney it can get quite crowded, and I found it on a stand-up paddleboard. My mum and my dad both had one each, and I'd borrow it every now and then when the surf was small, and I sort of found that you can have a lot of fun on lesser quality waves, which meant here in Sydney you could surf by yourself more often and have just as much fun as you would in a shortboard. So that's what got me into it, and I just sort of borrowed their boards for a couple of years when I was playing rugby, and then I think it was probably 2012 or 2013 I bought my own first, stand-up paddleboard, and it was a Fanatic 8.5 Pro Wave, and I remember that was a pretty good board back then. And
sounds incredibly small.
Yeah, well, yeah. Depends where you're coming from. So from a surfer, that was incredibly big because I'm like, I ride
exactly.
Yeah, like a 5'11" or a 6'0" shortboard, and I'm like, oh, how small can I go? It's still being able to stand on it, and that was what we came up with.
Can you draw us a picture of how it went down and the first time you ever got onto a stand-up paddleboard, whether it was your own or somebody else's?
Yeah, I can remember for sure. My mum still has the board. It was I think it was an 811 Starboard. Don't even know what model it is, but it's yellow. So that shows how old it was, because Starboard's been blue for as long as I've been in the scene.
Yeah.
But I still actually have got to get back out on it soon. It's a super fun board, like a full-on longboard sort of shape, but 811, so it's kind of short. It's like a mini Mao. And I remember surfing all summer, because I got the bug for it, and it just meant I was having more fun all the time because being on a bigger board and with the paddle you can throw it around still. And that was, I guess, the beginning of it all. But my very first time, actually, it's a pretty good story. My first time ever on a stand-up paddleboard, or first time seeing it, we were over in Hawaii, because my dad had a house over there at the time, and we saw Laird Hamilton surfing out Hookeeper, and we're like, well, that's pretty cool. Sort of a bit weird, but that's Laird was ripping. We came home, and my dad used to windsurf a bit, and he goes, we got to figure out how to do this stand-up thing. So we grabbed one of his bigger windsurfers, and we grabbed a rake, and we cut the prongs off the rake, just a plastic rake. And we went out our local spot, and we were paddling around on this windsurf board with a rake. And that was our very first sort of experience. And then there was a guy down the road with one of the shops, Windsurf Snow at the time. It's now WSS Boards. Sam, he'd got a custom board made up. So one of the local shapers had shaped him a stand-up paddleboard, and we borrowed that off him for a week or so, and we're like, okay, when he's coming to Australia, we're gonna get one, and that's, I guess, how we all started.
But I think I missed part of the story was that the rake. Did you not have like any kind of paddle on the base of the rake?
No, the rake has like the plastic rakes here in Australia, they're just like a triangle basically, and then at the bottom there's sort of just sort of little fingers that you rake up with. So we just cut the finger bits off, and it was just like a pole, like a broomstick with a triangle at the bottom. And that was our paddle. Yeah.
Saves you $400.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't know any difference, so it was perfect.
I'm sure it worked just as well. Well, not just as well, but still. So competing in stand-up paddleboard, when did that start happening? Because you must have jumped into some SUP-surf contests first, and then, as you said, getting into the races later, right?
Yeah, so there's a local stand-up paddle club here in Sydney, this SPSC, Sydney Paddle Surfing Club, and that was, my brother worked at the stand-up paddle, or the windsurf / stand-up paddle shop, through high school and school, so he dragged us down to some of the events sometimes because the shop sponsored it, and it was good for him to show face kind of thing and meet some of the people. So we competed with that every now and then, but we weren't regulars, and when we did go, we went pretty well because we had a surfing background, but we never, we weren't obsessed with it. We would never go to everyone, just sort of when they were around. But yeah, the first sort of serious competition I went to was one called the Marimbula Classic, which is, I think it's an old windsurfing event that's sort of morphed into a kite surfing, into a stand-up paddle, now into a foiling event, and just one of those classic, participation events. And there's no actual formal event. It's like a expression session for the entire weekend. And I went down there with my girlfriend because I used to kite surf a fair bit, and I thought, well, kite surfing and I'll do the stand-up paddling as well. This is sort of a secondary thing and see how I go. And I went to that event and I met a few guys that actually, to be honest, it changed my life. I met JC Shimahara, who's a SUP surfer from Hawaii, and Toby Cracknell, who's a very good SUP racer and SUP surfer from the Central Coast, and Kai Bates, who are a very good SUP surfer from Ulladulla. And these three guys basically said to me, "Oh, you're surfing all right, you should come to Sunset," because JC lives in Hawaii. So you can stay at my place and let's just have a crack at the stand-up world tour event. So this was it was the end of 2013, so I think I went over 2014 and went over there, and I made it through the trials into the stand-up world tour event, which for me, I was like, wow, I didn't think I'd ever be able to make it into this. And then I think I lost the first round, but because I'd made it into the main event, I earned the right to go to the rest of the trips on tour for the rest of the year. And so I went to Brazil. I went home and packed up and went to Brazil, and then I went to Abu Dhabi in the wave pool, and then I went to La Torche in France, and then Morocco at the end of the year. So it was You
just jumped on tour super quick. That was amazing. Doesn't sound like it was planned at all.
Not at all. Just did the one event, and my stepdad actually works for Qantas, so I got, I guess, a buddy pass, family pass, like sort of cheaper flights. So I didn't have a sponsor at the time. I was just going around, like basically just doing a trip and doing all these events and hanging out with all the guys and the Kais and the Connors, and yeah, it was pretty cool for sure.
So what do those guys like to hang out with? I mean, they must have been good fun. Kai Lenny and Connor Baxter.
Yeah, Kai was pretty private. He sort of kept to himself. He was already a superstar by then, and lots of people, I guess, wanted to hang out with him. But he was quite private. Connor was more real, I guess. He was more like you and I, just sort of just doing his thing. He's just on tour with everyone, and Zane as well, hilarious, really funny guy. Casper, and all those guys. It was interesting to see the different personalities, from traveling with them. But it was very interesting.
And Abu Dhabi, jumping into the wave pool, was it the first time you'd been in a wave pool?
Yeah, first and last. I haven't been in one since.
Oh, yeah. Is that there's enough for you? You never want to go again?
No, it was, it would have been awesome if we didn't have 40 other stand-up paddlers there with us. There's only one or two peaks at the Abu Dhabi one, and it was expensive to hire it out to practice, and awesome event. But I think I caught one wave before the event actually started. And I didn't have a great event. It wasn't, that sort of surfing isn't really my strength. So it was a fun experience, but if there was another event there, I probably wouldn't be rushing back to it.
So you're not gagging to go down to Melbourne and get into urban surf?
I'd like to have a go, but if I wouldn't go there for to compete, because I'm just technically for the exact same way. I guess my surfing requires a little bit more power than wave pools, at least than the Abu Dhabi wave pool could produce.
Yeah, I mean they're talking about the beast down at Urban Surf. This is their top end wave, and it looks pretty solid, pretty hollow. And a couple of the pros have reckoned. I think I can't remember his name, but Joel Parkinson. I think he cracked his head on the bottom, and he was like, "Wow, that's quite a severe wave."
Yeah, that I haven't. Yeah, actually, a mate of mine before the COVID-19 thing all started, was actually planning to head down there, and I was going to coach his son into a couple of waves down there, and that was. I think we were going to try to do that in March or April, but obviously with everything that's going on, it didn't eventuate. But I got to hit him up and get down there because that one does look fun. There's actually a couple other cool ones popping up all over the place now, so it'd be interesting to see how it all works out.
Yeah, up in Yeppoon, there's Surf Lakes. Hey, those guys are with their Mad Max style plunger.
Yeah, looks cool. That one looks cool, I think.
Oh, amazing. And it's nice because they're more inclusive. I think I would be a bit sort of hard pressed to go and jumping into Melbourne with a stand up paddleboard. I don't think they'd let you in.
Yeah, apparently they're not. You're not. They're only allowing shortboards. Like I think even longboards are hard longboards aren't even allowed at the moment, but bodyboards are. And yeah, so I kind of get it for the moment, but I think if you booked out the whole pool, and you've just got it with you and a few mates, then there's no reason you couldn't stand up paddle in it, really, if you knew what you were doing.
Exactly. Okay, so let's get into your race history, because you've got a hell of a list of accolades. I mean, Molokai, I'm just going to list them off and tell me if I'm wrong on any of these, okay? Molokai to Oahu champion in 2019, 2 times King of the Cut champion 2018, 2019, 5 times Australian champion, the Doctor champion 2017, 2018, and Molokai champion in 2017, APP World Tour SUP Surf runner-up in 2016, and the Sunset Beach Pro 2016, you came second. So, wow, I mean, that's an impressive last few years that you've gone it up. But it appears to me, just on my basic research that I did here, that Molokai to Oahu has been a goal for you. When did you first hear about the race, and what paddlers were winning at that time?
Yeah, when I first got into paddling, actually it was a year or two before I even got into paddling. My dad did it as a team with a mate of his, Norby, and at the time I had no interest in it at all. Dad was just, I'd drop Dad off for a paddle, and we'd meet him back at a surf spot where we were surfing, and me and my brother would get into it. I'm like, "What are you doing paddling? Like the surf's pumping. Just ditch the paddling and come surfing with us." And he's like, "No, got this event. It's kind of a big one, so I want to be training for it." And we were just like, whatever, more waves for us. Fast forward a couple of years, and I've decided I want to paddle the Hawaiian events, and I'm leaning on Dad. Hey, what did you do for this? What sort of training did you do here, and this and that? And yeah, that was super. I guess it was the first international paddleboard event I'd ever heard of, really, the M2O. Growing up, I hadn't really heard of it. One of the local guys, a mate of mine, actually, he turned out he was a 3-time champion, Brad Gall, for the prone paddleboard. And so when I first got into racing, he's like, "Oh, this is the race you want to be doing." And so he sort of coached me a bit. Between him and my dad, they coached me and sort of got me into it. And yeah, I was super lucky that growing up, I guess from 2010, my dad had my stepmom's American, so they had a house over in Hawaii. So and just happened to be on Maui above the Molokai Gulch, which, if you know Maui and the Molokai Gulch, it's the start of the Molokai run. So it's a 15-kilometre downwind run. It's probably consistently the best downwind run probably on Earth in terms of accessibility and reliability on wind. So once I got into, and we'd been going to Maui for years, for probably 5 or 6 years before I even understood what the Molokai run was. And when the first year I went over, I did a couple of Molokai runs, and I'm like, has this been here the whole time? Like, this is epic. It was like a ski run. There was a shuttle down the end, and you'd literally paddle down the coast, surfing waves the whole way, and then get on the shuttle and come back up and do it again. And I was doing 3 or 4 a day when I first got into it. That the first year, I think it was 2014 was my first season paddling over there. So that was my goal. From 2014 to 2019, I was just trying to do. Well, the first year, I was just trying to get into the Molokai because they don't just take anyone. I put my name down, and you go into a lottery, which isn't a lottery, but it's based on your experience, and they pick you or don't pick you. And so 2014, I didn't get picked, so I decided I'd build up my resume. I did the Maui to Molokai, I did Molokai, and I did paddle, like all the local races in Hawaii, and then went over to Western Australia and did the Doctor and King of the Cut. And that was sort of building up my resume. So next year I'd get in. 2015 rolls around, and a mate of mine comes over, Matt Notich, and both he and I completely new to the stand-up paddle scene, but we're doing pretty well. We had a pretty good result over at the Aussie titles in 2014, and we figured we should be able to get a start this year. Went over, we didn't get a spot, so we're just paddling, and we trained for the Molokai race, we trained for M2M, and at the M2M race, we actually do.
How do you train for the M2O though? I mean, do you just do Maliko Gulch again and again and again? Is that it?
That's what we were doing. We were just training downwind. We just literally get as many kilometers as we could in good downwind conditions. Which, looking back, it's good training, and it's good. At the time, it was exactly what we needed because we didn't have that much downwind experience. So what we needed to learn was how to be efficient downwind. I guess, or at least in bumpy ocean conditions. So us doing lots of downwind runs, it was like pressing fast forward on our experience. So instead of growing up doing downwinders, an outrigger or paddleboard, stand-up paddleboard, we would literally, for the month of July, we would just fit as many downwind runs as we possibly could fit into a month. So yeah, and it was fun. It was like going on the snow and just doing runs. Just going down from the top to the bottom, top to the bottom, top to the bottom, and we literally did that as often as we could. And we actually we did the M2M, and we actually got a pretty good result. I think Matt Notich pushed Connor the whole way, and I think I came 3rd or 4th in the Maui to Molokai, and we're like, surely we're going to get a start to M2O. And we actually had to email the organisers and say, look, we've just got this great result. We're here. Is there any chance we can get a start? And we both ended up getting an entry in 2015. It was our first year. Looking back, I kind of wish we didn't get the entry that year because there was no wind. So it was a completely flat M2O, which I think I took 5.5 hours, which is almost an hour and a half longer than I took last year. So it was almost a completely different race, but it was good to be a part of it.
For those people out there who don't know, what is it, 32 miles or something?
Yeah, it's just over 52 kilometres.
Oh, wow. Okay. And normally with a full downwind, with a good, decent wind, what kind of time are the guys doing? 4 hours, did you say? Yeah,
the record's 3:59 by Travis. So, the top guys are normally around, if conditions are good, around the 4-hour mark.
So how was 2016? Because there was one year where it was absolutely crazy weather, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so 2015 was flat, completely flat, massive swell, zero wind, and a raging current against us. And I was on a SIC, the V3 Bullet, which has not a lot of rocker, but all the SICs have a bit of rocker. And it was a tough race, mate. That was hot. So many people pulled out, and I think I came 5th that year, just because a lot of people didn't make it. I remember, who did I paddle past? I think it was either Connor or Slater Trout. Probably, I think it was actually both of them. They both pulled out. They were like, no, this is not what I've trained for. And I was here, and I'm like, man, I've trained 2 years for this. There's no way in hell that I am pulling out of this race. So I finished in 5th place. I was pretty happy with for my first year. And that was the beginning of it all.
Excellent. And then how did you feel when you were on the halfway through Molokai to Oahu in 2019? Were you leading all the way, or how did it pan out?
So 2019 last year was with we had an epic battle with Michael Booth, and basically I knew, obviously he's a SUP world champ. He's probably the best paddler at the moment in terms of all types of racing, at least distance racing especially. and I knew he was going to be hard to beat, but he hadn't spent that much time in Hawaii, and he hadn't spent that much time on an unlimited board. So going into it, I was the favourite because Travis Grant was out and Connor Baxter was over in Peru doing the Pan American Games. So there's a bit of pressure on me. But I was like, well, don't forget about Boothie and Kenny as well. Like I knew Kenny Kaneko was training pretty hard. So, normally going into M2O, you have an idea of like a form guide because there's M2M about a month out and then a Molokai run about 2 weeks out and then there's M2O. So you kind of know where people are at. Kenny and Boothie both hadn't done either of those two races, and the guys that had done M2M and the Molokai race weren't racing in the M2O. So for me, I had no idea. I came second at M2M. Travis won. I'd beaten Connor. So it was a pretty close race between us three. But those guys weren't racing in M2O anymore. So it was a really, I guess, a really different lead up for me because normally you've got, so Connor's here, Travis is there, and, you sort of gauge yourself off them. But because they weren't racing, you had to sort of create, are these guys even fit? Have they been training for it? This and that. Boothie's coming over. He's a complete unknown. He's never done any of the Hawaiian races. So it was, it was halfway across the channel. Me and Boothie were right next to each other. Boothie actually led for most of the race up at that point. And I've raced him a couple of times in Western Australia where he lives, and generally he falls apart. Not falls apart, but he has like a chink in his arm at about the 1.5 to 2 hour mark. And I remember looking at my watch at 1.5 hours. I'm like, okay, well, he's going to go a bit better today, which I guess I expected. And then the 2 hour mark, I remember looking at my watch. I'm like, man, he's still here. He's still out in front too, pushing hard. And I'm like, there's no way he can sustain this for as long, all the way across the channel. And I think it wasn't until the 2.5 or 2:45 mark that he really fell apart. And nutrition was his issue, he said, and he had to sit down and sort out his cramps. And once I got a gap on him, and then his nutrition fell apart and he had to stop. And my boat's like, don't worry about Boothie. He's gone. Let's think about the record. And I was like, mate, I just want to finish. I didn't give a shit about the record, to be honest. And it was a good year. So almost everyone broke the record that year, except for, I think, like 2 or 3 divisions, the SUP being one of them. And I was like 2.5, 3 minutes off the record. And it could have come down to a wave at the end. But I was so not worried about the record paddling across. I was just worried about winning it. And they said that Boothie wasn't anywhere in sight, this and that. But I'm like, you know what? I know how good a paddler he is. If he gets a sniff, he will mow me down in that upwind leg. And the upwind leg was serious last year because it was such a windy year, which meant it was fast. It meant the last 2 or 3 Ks was upwind, and probably I've never gone so slow in that last section. So I just wanted to finish. And it was a pretty emotional year because my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer and managed to get the win for him, which was really nice. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Wow.
Yeah. So it was
super proud.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's next for you? Are you you looking to get the record whenever the next M2O is?
Yeah, I don't know. Like the record, it'd be a nice thing to get, but it's not really at the top of my list. I think always for me it was winning it, just getting on top of the podium. And I didn't really expect to be. I kind of thought it'd be a longer journey because I came 5th my first year, then I got 2 fourths. I got a 3rd in 2018 behind Connor and Trav. And this year, 2019, I got the win without Connor and Trav. So, it'd be nice to race Connor and Trav in 2021, I guess. But then I'm not sure how much longer I want to be stand-up paddle racing because the downwind foiling has been super, super fun. And that's something that I'd love to do. Like if M2O foil race was on a different day to M2O SUP race, I would 100% foil it. Because it's on the same day as the stand-up paddle race, I kind of I want to defend my 2019 title. Kind of 2 thoughts in my head. I want to defend, but it's also, well, I've already won it. What more is there to do? I'm sure it'd be nice to win it twice, but probably my passion now downwinding is on the foil. It's so much fun, and it's so much faster. Yeah, so much faster. It's not even comparable. It's like comparing walking to riding your bike. You're almost going double the speed of what you are or at least a third faster. Yeah, 30% faster, I'd say, on the stand-up.
And are you using a wing as well?
Yeah, I've been getting amongst the wing-a-ding, I call it. But I don't know, it's a little bit more like sailing than it is like downwinding. Like downwinding is so good because you can literally you just got your paddle. And, if you want to go faster, you got to paddle and pump and get down the bump. Whereas with the wing, I found I probably haven't done enough of it. But it was only in the last couple of sessions that when I've sort of, I guess they call free winged, where you just sort of hold the wing at your hip and you can kind of just downwind like you would normally. And it works pretty well, but I guess I don't have an issue getting going. I can paddle myself up onto the plane, up onto the foil. Whereas if that's an issue, that's where the wing is super helpful because you can get up just using just pumping using the wind. So the wing's it's been fun in those days that, if here in Sydney we get winds that are the best wind for downwind is southerly or northeasterly, and they come with frontal systems. We also get lots of westerly winds in winter, so you can't really downwind in a westerly. So with the wing, you can make the most of the wind, and there's a little sort of 2 kilometre run that you wouldn't bother driving to downwind, but with the wing, you can literally sail upwind and then either free wing back downwind, or you just pack your wing up and paddle back with sup foiling. So that's been fun. It's just sort of another challenge and opens up more options for conditions. So that's been super cool.
It's amazing how it's progressed. And when you first saw videos of Kyle Lenny back in the day doing downwind foil runs in Hawaii, did you realize how popular that was going to be?
No, I had no idea. It looked super fun, and I was in Hawaii when he released that video. We'd just done Molokai, and he hadn't won. And he's like, "Oh, he's just released this video to try to get the limelight on him." But but no, it was super cool. We're like, "Holy shit! Like that's next level." It was it looks like it was going to be super fun. But yeah, we weren't sure how accessible it was. He was on this massive race board and with a foil, and it looked cool. Like, it was like, how's that even working? The standard. But yeah, we didn't know how accessible. Like, you couldn't buy the foils, you couldn't buy the boards. It's amazing how much things have progressed since then.
But it's still pretty difficult for the man in the street to start foiling, I think. I mean, it's good. You guys have got incredible skills and strength and training. So it's a whole different ballgame to just average Joe picking up a foil and going for it, right?
Yeah, it's funny when people sort of stop you in the street and say, how hard is that to learn? And it's like,
yeah.
Do you remember learning to surf? And they're like, no, I don't surf. I'm like, oh. Have you ever ridden a unicycle? And they're like, no. I'm like, you're probably going to have a hard time. But yeah, it's hard. It's harder than learning to surf. I always explain foiling like surfing on a unicycle because you're literally on this one point balancing forward and back. So it's interesting.
And how did you actually learn? Did you go behind a boat and get towed? Was that it?
I wish. No, I think it was like 6 months after Kai's video. And I was on Maui because there was an APP event at Hokipa. And one of my friends, actually the Spencer boys, Jeffrey and Finn, I was hanging out with them a little bit, and they were working on foils with Alex Aguera, a Go foil at the time. And I said, I want to have a go at that. They're like, oh yeah, we'll introduce you to Alex. I'm sure he's got a spare setup. So we were introduced to Alex, and he lent us a board and a foil and said, have fun, boys. Hold on to it until you have to go. So we had like a week just paddling out and just foiling. And it was between Vinicius Martinez and myself, and we were just sharing. One of us would go on the sup surfboard, the other one would go on the foil, and we'd just swap over. And that was when we first were introduced to it. And then a couple months later, we went back again and had Alex lent it to us for another couple of days. And I said, where do I buy one? Like, hey, can I buy one off you? Because I know I can't take this one. This is yours. He's like, yeah. Well, I'll send one to you. And so I ordered one, and it was like a 3 month or 2 months before it arrived to me in Australia. And that summer, all I did was foil. It was like 6 months. Foil brained is the term, and is what I was. All I could think about was foiling for that summer. And it was, yeah. But no boat, no towing, nothing easy. I learned in the waves, which is like the worst, hardest way to learn. But I didn't injure myself, luckily. And I wish towing boats was known.
Yeah. Have you taken them out in big waves, foils?
The biggest waves I've taken, I've paddled into some pretty solid waves on my stand-up foil. which was super fun but super scary too. And then I've towed in as well, which is way more, I guess, safe and accessible for most people. But it's almost too easy, the towing. It's like you just get towed into this wave and you just, like, you don't have to paddle out. You can do it with your hair. If you don't fall off, your hair's dry the whole time because you don't have to be near the white water. And you just get towed in, you sort of ride it for as long as you can, and then you get picked up and you get taken back out and you catch another wave. And it's like cheating. It's like having going down, like, I like to compare it to skiing or snowboarding because that's what it feels like. It'd be like going down a run, and when you paddle out, you got to hike all the way up the hill. That's the equivalent. Whereas when you're towing, you get towed to the top by like a skidoo, and then you go down the bottom, and then you get towed back up to the top straight away, and you have another run, and you go back up to the top, and it's just like you can ride like a month's worth of waves in like a 40-minute session because you're literally just doing, like, you get so many waves, and we're going to spots where there's no one else, so it's cheating. The toe foiling, it's so much fun.
So, like, for new people who are trying to get out into big waves and on a stand up, I mean, when I say big waves, I mean like just 6 to 8 foot, nothing massive, because it's really tough to get out in larger waves on a stand up. What's the trick? Is it just going out in a where there's a channel?
Yeah, so Hawaii's so good for it because waves like Sunset, there is literally a river that runs out to sea. It's actually hard to paddle in. It's such a strong current that pulls you out. Back home here in Sydney, if there's a big swell, it's a pain in the ass to get out. It's really hard because it's all beach breaks, and there's a few reef breaks, but beach break and a reef on the outside. So it's on a stand up, you've just got to learn to paddle fast and read the ocean really well. So be able to get out at the right time.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
And take quite a few in the head, I guess.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, lots.
So you've just done a fantastic deal with Sonova. What's the story behind your relationship with them?
Yeah, so I've been working with Sonova for the last 4 years, I think, and kind of all started because for Molokai, I wanted a board that was competitive, and we kind of thought that the SICs were a bit dated and that there was a better design that could be created. So I actually ordered a custom board off Marcus Tardrew, got it made through Deep, and just sort of right time, right place. We were chatting, and a mate of mine, JC Shimahara, that my Hawaiian friend, he was sponsored by Sonova, and he's like, you should try and chat to these guys. And I'd never heard of Sonova, so I was like, no, I'm pretty happy with JP. And then it kind of all just fell into place that Sonova wanted to create like what they called a SUP race team, and they wanted a couple guys to sort of head it, so to I guess help develop it. And so Kelly Margetts, Marcus Tardrew, and myself were the three that sort of created the SUP race unit. So they wanted us to create competitive stand-up paddle race boards, and they wanted us to race them at events so people knew what they were. And super lucky with that. And we sort of did that whole sort of race unit thing. And then sort of a part of the deal was originally like we'd work on a range for myself, and that was originally the James Casey Flash, which I'm stoked with how that board went. And just recently, with all the foiling stuff going on, I'm like, we need to create some foil boards, like really work, like do some R&D and work on it. And I said, I want to work on it, and between Marcus and I, we'll come out with something really good. But okay, yeah, they sort of gave us the reins, do whatever you want. You can make this many boards, and good luck to you, kind of thing. So we got a few boards made, and we were testing downwind conditions, surf conditions for the foil, and then I had a few other ideas for surf SUPs, so we sort of worked on that too. And
is it the Revolution?
Yeah, the Revolution. Really love that board.
I had a look at your video explaining it. It looked really amazing. It just looks like I just wanted to get on that thing straight away.
Yeah, it's sort of a different board, and sort of the whole. It's a good little story of how the Revolution came to be. I was surfing where the Sonova factory is in Thailand. There's a little beach break wave out the front, and great for a longboard, but you need pretty good conditions to surf it. I went over there and was SUP surfing. I was just testing some of the boards out, and Bert Berger was out in his longboards, the Sonova Shaper. And I said to him, can we swap boards, Bert? He's like, what, you want to stand up this? I'm like, yeah, I reckon I want to see if I can stand on it. He goes, okay. So we swapped, and I got a couple of waves, and he was blown away. He's like, how? There's no way you could do those turns without a paddle. Like, that's literally, there's something in that. And I'm like, yeah, that was awesome. Like, the board felt great. It was a little bit small for me, but, Bert's a big guy, and me on a stand-up, I could kind of get it to work. And I'm like, we've got to make a board like this. And he's like, yeah, that's definitely on the to-do list. Kind of got lost other projects more important. And then just recently, I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's make. So I chose the biggest the biggest longboard in their range, which is called the Big Boy, and it's like a 10-footer. It's like a Waikiki tanker, basically. I think it's like 88, 89 liters. And so I got a production one of them. We started with that. So yeah, that works well, but it's not the most performance. Was okay. I got a board. I'm gonna put this rocker line, this and that. Made that board for me, and then I found that one almost had too much rocker. So we basically split the middle, and so it was a third board we tried, and that was the Revolution. It was just perfect, really clean outline, little hip on the tail, so it surfed like a shortboard off the tail, and with the fine rails, it all worked. It works in ankle high to overhead, and I'm stoked. Bert's done a great job on that board, and
you can get a lot of speed and flow, I guess, out of that.
Oh, just with sheer waterline, it just glides. But then when you step back on the tail actually isn't too dissimilar from the Flash. That like you step back and it's like you're riding a little board again. So yeah, I'm super excited.
Sounds amazing. So I'd love to get one of those one day.
So yeah, just like that, like we sort of designed a few boards, and we upgraded the Flash, so it's now there's a new board called the Flow, and we have the Revolution, and then the foil boards, the Pilot and the Aviator, and they're loving all of them. They're all going really well. The Flow is kind of good in everything from just braking to 6 foot. The Revolution, same sort of thing. And then we've got a new one called the Throttle, which I used at Sunset last competition, and that one's really good when it's really bumpy, messy conditions and sort of bigger surf. And then the foil boards, the Pilot and the Aviator for the stand up and prone foil. And super excited with how it's all come out, and really happy with the end product.
It's great. And you're selling them all on your site along with having Coach Casey, and that appears to be a big part of your earnings. I don't know if I'm right or wrong there, but how's business in general for you? Can you make a viable living out of SUP?
Yeah, at the moment it's I'm not making a lot of money, but I'm getting by. It's I love it, so it's part of what I'll be doing anyway. And I'm lucky enough that there's enough people here in Sydney that they want to learn from me. Just based on my experiences overseas paddling and, even results here at home. So I never intended to get into coaching stand-up, but probably in 2016, I think after I'd done a couple of Molokais, one of the local guys asked if I would be interested in coaching him. And I was like, oh, I could, but I'll just basically be telling you what I'm doing. He's like, yeah, that's fine. That's all I want. I just want to know, I want some guidance on how I can become a better paddler. And so that's kind of how it started, and it's just sort of flourished from there. I now coach the local Sydney Paddle Surfing Club. I write them a program throughout the year and sort of peaking for each of their local races. And I've sort of expanded on that. I coach privately as well. So like I do the club, I do private clients, and I've just recently, since the COVID period, I've started doing online analysis. So people send in a video to me and I'll critique it basically and give them feedback on how they can improve. And that's been great because I wasn't doing, one-on-one lessons. So I was just sort of doing the lessons basically online. And I've also, during this COVID period, I've created like an online learning module. So it's got, basics on flat water technique to how to do a kick turn, how to do a beach start, how to do a crossbow turn. We're working on an ocean and downwind module now. So basically sharing my knowledge on how to downwind and little tricks and, skills that you got to practice so you can be, competent out to sea or in the bay in the strong windy conditions, which has been really good. So that's really, I guess, grown my business a fair bit, as well as doing training plans.
That's definitely the way of the future. And obviously, so it's great to see you've had a fruitful lockdown. I mean, that's amazing. I think there's so many good things that have come out of lockdown. What is your biggest lesson that you've learned from lockdown?
Oh, I guess it's don't take anything for granted, because, how's that within the space of a month, all the travel and, things we took for granted were just taken away from us, I guess. So it's one, really cherish those around you. So your friends, your family, people that are close to you, and, don't take them for granted. But also don't take the travel and all that sort of stuff for granted either, because, people that do travel internationally, we're so lucky. There's so many people that don't have that opportunity. And I think those that do it a lot, you kind of think, oh, I've got to travel again, it's a pain in the ass, got to jump on a plane. But yeah, it's we're so lucky that we can do that. But I think also, I guess, in terms of like working, and you can create, like there's, again, you got to think outside the box. Don't think this is the only way to do it. There's if you put your head down and, really think about something that might work, you can create something new and different, and you can market that for yourself to, create sort of a new little niche platform for yourself, at least for the coaching sort of stuff. That's what I found.
Well, judging by the look of your website, it looks like you've got a bright future ahead. So that's fantastic. Well done. That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, James, thanks so much for spending all the time chatting to us. I know it's been quite a long interview, which is great, and we've got some absolute gems in there. So, but where can we find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at James__Casey, or you can go to my website at www.caseyAUS.com.
Excellent. Well, yeah. Thanks once again. Really appreciate your time, James, and good luck for the future.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nick, and nice to meet you and chat.
Thank you for listening to SUP FM, the #1 podcast for stand-up paddlers wherever you are. If you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on iTunes. Until then, we'll see you on the